The Galactic Council had long monitored Earth from afar, intrigued by its rich biodiversity and the peculiar behavior of its dominant species, humans. These beings were far from the genetic perfection of the Council's member races, yet they exhibited resilience and emotional depth that defied scientific explanation. After years of deliberation, the Council decided it was time to initiate contact, not to conquer but to understand. Princess Naali, daughter of the Council leader and a brilliant geneticist in her own right, was chosen as the ambassador. Naali was known for her sharp intellect and biting wit, traits that made her both admired and feared among her peers. When the assignment was announced, Naali accepted it with a mixture of pride and disdain. Humans, she had scoffed, her melodic voice carrying a note of amusement. Their entire species is built on inefficiency and unpredictability. But if the Council wishes me to study them, so be it. Her arrival on Earth was an event of global significance. The skies above New York City shimmered with iridescent hues as Naali's spacecraft descended, its sleek form resembling a silver teardrop. The world watched in awe as she emerged, her figure glowing softly under the artificial lights. Naali was a vision of alien beauty, her tall, slender frame accentuated by her shimmering blue skin and luminous golden eyes. Her movements were fluid and graceful, as if she floated rather than walked. Humans gawked, captivated by her presence, while she regarded them with mild amusement. The reception held in her honor was a grand affair, attended by world leaders, scientists, and cultural icons. Lavish decorations adorned the venue, and a sense of awe filled the air. Yet, despite the grandeur, Naali remained unimpressed. As she walked through the crowd, her translator glowing softly, she observed the humans around her. Their eyes followed her every move, some filled with admiration, others with curiosity. She found their stares amusing, their fascination with her appearance both flattering and trivial. Primitive creatures, she thought, her lips curving into a faint smile. They are so easily captivated by the unfamiliar. One human, however, caught her attention, not for his appearance but for his demeanor. Kieran, a young scientist assigned to study interspecies compatibility, stood apart from the crowd. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and his posture was relaxed, almost casual. Unlike the others, he didn't seem intimidated by Naali's presence. Instead, he watched her with a mixture of curiosity and intrigue. When their eyes met, Kieran offered a small, polite nod. Naali, surprised by his composure, nodded back, her curiosity piqued. As the evening progressed, Naali found herself seated at a table surrounded by Earth's scientific elite. Kieran was among them, his seat directly across from hers. The conversation revolved around the potential for collaboration between their species, but Naali's focus was elsewhere. Kieran spoke with confidence, explaining the intricacies of human biology and their unique genetic traits. Naali listened, her amusement growing with each passing moment. "Your reproductive system seems so basic," she remarked, her voice carrying a melodic tone that belied her condescension. "It's a wonder your species has survived this long." The room fell silent, the humans unsure how to respond to her blunt observation. Kieran, however, smiled. "Basic doesn't mean ineffective, Princess," he replied calmly. "Perhaps you need to see for yourself how we humans thrive." His words, spoken with a hint of challenge, caught Naali off guard. She raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his audacity. "Bold words for a species still confined to its own planet," she said, her tone playful yet sharp. "And yet, we're the ones you've come to study," Kieran countered, his eyes glinting with quiet confidence. Their exchange drew the attention of those around them, the tension palpable, yet laced with curiosity. Naali found herself intrigued by Kieran's composure. Unlike the others, he didn't cower before her. Instead, he met her gaze head-on, unafraid to challenge her assumptions. After the dinner, Naali retreated to her quarters, a futuristic structure designed to mimic the environment of her homeworld. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the air was thick with a pleasant, floral aroma. She stood before a holographic display, reviewing the data she had gathered during the reception. Despite her earlier amusement, she couldn't shake the image of Kieran from her mind. His words, his demeanor, his refusal to be intimidated. They lingered, stirring something within her she couldn't quite identify. The next day, Nayali decided to explore the human world further. Accompanied by a small team of aides, she visited a research facility where Kieran was conducting his studies. When she entered the lab, all activity ceased as the scientists turned to watch her. Kieran, however, continued his work, seemingly unfazed by her presence. Nayali approached him, her golden eyes glinting with curiosity. "You seem quite comfortable in my presence," she remarked. Kieran glanced up, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Should I not be?" "Most humans find me intimidating," she said, her tone laced with amusement. "I'm not most humans," he replied simply. Nayali tilted her head, studying him. "Show me what makes your species so unique," she demanded, her curiosity finally overtaking her disdain. Kieran nodded, setting aside his work. He began by explaining the emotional aspect of human connections, speaking of love, passion, and the deep bonds that form between humans. Nayali listened, her initial amusement giving way to genuine curiosity. "Your emotions seem messy," she remarked, her voice thoughtful. "On my planet, reproduction is a clinical process, devoid of emotion. That's what makes us different," Kieran replied. "Our emotions fuel our connections, making the experience meaningful." To illustrate his point, Kieran reached out and lightly touched Nayali's hand. Her skin was cool to the touch, smooth and almost metallic. She flinched, pulling her hand away, her golden eyes wide with surprise. "What was that?" she asked, her voice tinged with confusion. "Connection," Kieran said simply. Nayali stared at him, her mind racing. She had never experienced anything like it before. The sensation was brief yet profound, a warmth that lingered even after she pulled away. For the first time, Nayali began to see humans in a new light. They were more than the primitive creatures she had dismissed them as. They were complex, emotional, and in their own way, extraordinary. As she left the lab that evening, Nayali couldn't help but replay the moment in her mind. Kieran's touch, his words, his unwavering confidence. They stirred something within her she couldn't quite understand. And for the first time since arriving on Earth, Nayali found herself eager to learn more. The days following Nayali's visit to the research facility were filled with a newfound curiosity. The princess, once dismissive of Earth and its inhabitants, now found herself fascinated by the very species she had ridiculed. The memory of Kieran's touch lingered, not just in her thoughts, but in a subtle warmth that seemed to radiate from her hand. Nayali, however, was not one to let emotions cloud her judgment. Her focus remained on her mission, understanding the potential of human biology and their role in the galactic ecosystem. To this end, she proposed a series of experiments to observe human interaction and behavior firsthand. The Galactic Council had provided her with resources to conduct these studies, and she decided to use them by inviting a select group of humans to participate in an exchange program. Kieran, naturally, was among the chosen few. When Kieran received the invitation, he wasn't surprised. Nayali had made an impression on him as much as he seemed to have made on her. He accepted with a mix of professional curiosity and personal intrigue, eager to see what the enigmatic princess had planned. The research facility transformed into a hub of activity as humans and Nayali's aides worked together. The experiments were designed to test not just physical compatibility, but emotional and intellectual connections. Nayali observed everything with keen interest, her golden eyes scanning every interaction, every exchange. During one particular session, Kieran found himself paired with Nayali for an exercise meant to explore trust. The task required them to navigate a series of obstacles blindfolded, relying solely on verbal guidance. "You expect me to trust a human with my safety?" Nayali asked, her tone half mocking, as she donned the blindfold. Only if you want to succeed, Kieran replied with a grin, his confidence unwavering. As they moved through the course, Naali hesitated at first, her natural inclination to rely on her own abilities clashing with the exercise's demands. But Kieran's calm and steady voice guided her, instilling a sense of security she hadn't anticipated. "Step to your left," he instructed. "There's a drop ahead, but it's shallow. Trust me." Naali hesitated, her instinct to question overpowering. Yet something about his tone, a blend of authority and reassurance, compelled her to obey. She stepped down, her foot landing securely on the lower platform. "Good," Kieran said, his voice carrying a note of pride. By the time they completed the course, Naali felt an unfamiliar sense of accomplishment. Trusting someone else, especially a human, was foreign to her. But she couldn't deny the exhilaration of the experience. "You're better at this than I expected," she admitted, removing the blindfold. "Humans have their moments," Kieran replied with a wink. The experiments continued, each one revealing more about the peculiarities of human nature. Naali watched as participants laughed, argued, and collaborated, their emotions raw and unfiltered. She began to see the depth of their connections, the way they communicated without words, the subtle shifts in their expressions that spoke volumes. One evening, after a particularly long day of observations, Naali found herself wandering the facility's gardens. The Earth's flora was lush and vibrant, a stark contrast to the sterile environments of her homeworld. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of blooming flowers, and the stars above shone with a brilliance she had never noticed before. Kieran appeared, as if drawn by the same need for solace. He approached her with a casualness that still surprised her, his presence unassuming yet comforting. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, standing a respectful distance away. "Sleep is not a necessity for my kind," Naali replied, her voice softer than usual. "But I find this place calming." Kieran nodded, stepping closer. "Nature has that effect. It's one of the things humans value most, even if we don't always show it." They stood in silence for a moment, the sounds of the night surrounding them. Naali felt a strange sense of peace, an unfamiliar yet welcome sensation. "You've changed," Kieran said finally, breaking the silence. Naali turned to him, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" "When you first arrived, you seemed detached, like you were above all of this," he explained, gesturing to the world around them. "But now, you're starting to see us for who we are." Naali considered his words, her expression thoughtful. "Perhaps I was too quick to judge," she admitted. "Your species is more complex than I anticipated." Kieran smiled, a genuine warmth in his gaze. "That's the beauty of humanity. We're messy, but that mess is what makes us us." As the days turned into weeks, Naali's perception of humans continued to evolve. She found herself drawn not just to their biology, but to their spirit, their resilience, and their capacity for love. Kieran, in particular, became a source of fascination. His intelligence, his humor, and his unwavering confidence challenged her in ways she had never experienced. One evening, as they worked late in the lab, Naali decided to confront the growing tension between them. "Kieran," she began, her voice steady yet tinged with uncertainty, "there's something I don't understand about your species." "What's that?" he asked, looking up from his work. "This connection you speak of, this emotional bond. How does it manifest?" Kieran paused, setting down his tools. He studied her for a moment, his gaze searching. "It's hard to explain," he admitted. "It's something you have to feel." Naali frowned, her analytical mind struggling to grasp the concept. "Feelings are intangible. They cannot be measured or observed. Maybe not in the way you're used to," Kieran said, a hint of a smile on his lips. "But that doesn't make them any less real." Before she could respond, he reached out, his hand hovering near hers. Naali hesitated but allowed the contact, his fingers brushing against her cool, smooth skin. The sensation was electric, a warmth spreading from the point of contact and radiating through her body. Her golden eyes widened, her breath hitching. "What is this?" she whispered. "Connection," Kieran said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. For the first time, Naali understood what he meant. It wasn't just a physical sensation. It was something deeper, a bond that defied logic and reason. And for the first time, she found herself wanting more. The air in the research facility grew charged with something Naali couldn't quite name. Her mind, usually so sharp and analytical, now wrestled with unfamiliar sensations. The simplicity of human emotions was deceptive. They weren't shallow but layered, each interaction carrying subtle nuances. After that moment in the lab, where Kieran's touch ignited something unexplainable, Naali couldn't shake the memory. His words echoed in her thoughts. Connection. For a race that prided itself on logic and reason, such an abstract concept seemed alien. Yet it intrigued her more than she cared to admit. A test of intimacy. The next phase of Naali's study was ambitious, testing physical compatibility between humans and her kind. The Galactic Council demanded tangible results, and Naali knew the implications. If humans proved suitable for reproduction or long-term genetic blending, alliances between the species could solidify or crumble under the weight of failed expectations. When Naali proposed a trial to her aides, they regarded her with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. One of them, a silver-skinned aide named Vereen, voiced her concerns. "Princess, are you certain this is wise? Physical interaction with humans is unprecedented. Their physiology is volatile." Naali squared her shoulders, her golden eyes unwavering. "If we are to understand them fully, we must explore every avenue. I will not delegate this responsibility. I will lead by example." Vereen's gaze flickered with hesitation, but she bowed her head in deference. "As you command." When Naali informed Kieran of the trial, he was caught off guard. "You want to what now?" he asked, his brows lifting in disbelief. "Physical compatibility," Naali explained, her tone clinical. "It is a necessary component of our research. Your cooperation is essential." Kieran leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You make it sound like a science project." "It is," she replied, her expression serious. For a moment, Kieran stared at her, his amusement fading as he realized she wasn't joking. "You're really serious about this, huh?" Naali nodded. "Your species places great importance on physical and emotional bonds. To understand humanity, I must experience both." Kieran rubbed the back of his neck, his confidence wavering for the first time. "I'm not sure how to feel about being part of an alien science experiment." "It is more than an experiment," Naali said, her voice softening. "It is an opportunity to bridge the gap between our worlds." Kieran studied her, the weight of her words sinking in. Finally, he nodded. "All right, let's bridge that gap." The first encounter. The setting for their trial was carefully chosen, a private chamber designed to minimize distractions and maximize comfort. The room was dimly lit with soft, ambient lighting that reflected off the metallic walls. A faint, soothing hum filled the air, a feature meant to calm both participants. Naali entered first, her movements deliberate and composed. She wore a flowing garment of iridescent fabric that shimmered with every step, accentuating her otherworldly beauty. Despite her calm exterior, an undercurrent of nervous energy coursed through her. Kieran arrived moments later, dressed casually but with a noticeable stiffness in his posture. His usual confidence seemed tempered by the weight of the moment. For a while, they simply stood there, the silence stretching between them. Naali was the first to break it. "Are you uncomfortable?" she asked, her voice steady but curious. "A little," Kieran admitted with a nervous chuckle. "This isn't exactly a typical Friday night for me." Naali tilted her head, her expression softening. "Neither is it for me, but discomfort often precedes understanding." Kieran nodded, taking a deep breath. "All right, Princess, let's get started." Naali approached him, her movements graceful yet hesitant. She reached out, her fingers brushing against his arm. The warmth of his skin startled her. It was so unlike her own cool, smooth texture. "Your body temperature is higher than ours," she observed, her tone analytical. "And yours is cooler," Kieran replied, his voice catching slightly. Her hand traveled to his chest, resting over his heartbeat. The rhythmic thrum beneath her palm fascinated her. "This is your heart," she murmured. "It beats so rapidly. Does it always do this?" "Not usually," Kieran said, his voice lower now. "It's faster when I'm nervous." "Are you nervous now?" "A little," he admitted, his gaze locking with hers. "But not in a bad way." Naali studied him, her golden eyes searching his face for signs of deceit. She found none. Emboldened, she stepped closer, the gap between them narrowing. "What about now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Kieran swallowed hard, his hands instinctively resting on her hips. "Still nervous," he said, his lips curving into a faint smile. "But definitely not in a bad way." Their proximity intensified the moment, the air between them charged with anticipation. Naali leaned in, her face inches from his. She could feel the heat radiating from him, the subtle rise and fall of his chest. "Humans experience attraction through physical and emotional stimuli," she said, her voice almost clinical but laced with curiosity. "I want to understand this." Kieran chuckled softly, his breath brushing against her skin. "There's only one way to find out." With that, he closed the gap, his lips meeting hers in a kiss that started gentle but deepened as she responded. Naali's initial hesitation melted away, replaced by an overwhelming surge of sensations. Her hands moved to his shoulders, gripping them for stability as her body reacted in ways she couldn't have predicted. When they finally pulled apart, Naali's golden eyes were wide with wonder. "That was unexpected." Kieran smiled, his hands still resting on her hips. "Good unexpected or bad unexpected?" "Good," she admitted, her voice breathless. A new understanding. The trial marked a turning point for Naali. The experience had shattered her preconceived notions about human intimacy, replacing them with a newfound respect for their capacity to connect on such a profound level. Over the following days, Naali and Kieran spent more time together, not just as subjects of the study, but as equals exploring the boundaries of their worlds. Naali began to see humanity not as inferior beings, but as a species with unique strengths and vulnerabilities. For Kieran, Naali's transformation was equally profound. The once arrogant princess had revealed a depth of curiosity and vulnerability that made her more relatable, more human. As their bond deepened, Naali found herself grappling with conflicting emotions. Her duty to the Galactic Council demanded objectivity, yet her growing attachment to Kieran threatened to blur the lines. One evening, as they sat beneath the stars in the facility's garden, Naali voiced her concerns. "This connection between us, it complicates things," she admitted, her gaze fixed on the night sky. "Complications aren't always a bad thing," Kieran replied, his tone light but sincere. Naali turned to him, her golden eyes searching his face. "And what if it jeopardizes a mission? What if it endangers the alliance?" Kieran reached out, his hand covering hers. "Then we figure it out together. That's what humans do. We adapt." For the first time, Naali allowed herself to believe him. As days turned into weeks, the once clear division between human and alien blurred. Naali and Kieran had shared much more than a physical connection. An emotional bond began to take root, deep and undeniable. But the stakes were higher than either of them had anticipated. Their relationship, both personal and professional, had far-reaching consequences, not just for them, but for the future of both their worlds. Naali had arrived on Earth with a mission to understand human physiology and emotions. The Galactic Council had been clear that their future, whether they remained allies or became adversaries, would depend on their ability to connect with humanity in more than just a political sense. But now, after weeks of studying human connection through Kieran, Naali realized that her own understanding of connection had shifted, grown into something more profound than she could have ever predicted. The Council's verdict. One morning, As Naali stood before the large holographic projection of the Galactic Council, her heart pounded in her chest. The members' voices echoed in the vast chamber, their words formal, impersonal. The decision she'd been dreading was about to be made. You have conducted your studies well. Princess Naali, the lead counselor, a tall figure with glowing amber eyes, said. But your personal involvement with the human male, Kiran, has raised concerns. It is clear that you have become emotionally attached to him. Naali held her ground. Her golden eyes met the counselor's without flinching. It is not a weakness, she replied, her voice steady. It is the beginning of something necessary. The human ability to form emotional bonds, to connect with one another on a deeper level, is essential for our future. The council murmured among themselves, exchanging glances. Naali's words had weight, but the council wasn't easily swayed. Her duty had always been to her people, to the stability of their galactic empire. Emotions, especially those toward a human, were seen as a distraction, a dangerous complication. But the counselor nodded slowly, as if processing the information. Your findings are valuable, Princess. The bridge you have built between your kind and the humans is unexpected, but it cannot be ignored. We must consider the long-term implications. Naali braced herself for their decision. She knew the stakes. If the council rejected her findings, if they deemed the human connection too dangerous, it could spell disaster, not only for her, but for Kiran and for Earth. She had risked everything, not just her duty, but her very place within the Galactic Council, all in pursuit of something far greater than herself. Finally, the lead counselor spoke again. We will approve the continuation of your research. However, we expect you to report back on the progress of this connection. You may proceed with Kiran and further study the potential for future alliances. But remember, Princess, you must maintain the balance. Your loyalty to your people must not falter. Naali felt a wave of relief wash over her, though she kept her expression neutral. She had done it. She had convinced the council to allow her to follow her heart, not just her duty, a new path. Kiran was waiting for her when she returned to the research facility. He stood by the entrance, hands in his pockets, watching her approach. When he saw the look on her face, he knew the news was good. He smiled, but it was tempered with a trace of worry. So, Kiran asked, his voice quiet but expectant. Naali looked up at him, her eyes softer than before. The council approved it, she said, her voice warm with relief. We're free to continue our work together. Kiran grinned, the tension in his body easing. That's great news. But as he reached out to her, Naali paused. Her eyes searched his face, as if weighing something unspoken. The connection between them was stronger now than ever before, but there were still complexities neither of them had fully understood. I must be honest with you, Kiran, Naali said, her tone serious. I've learned much from you, more than I ever imagined I would. But I've also come to realize something. Kiran tilted his head, intrigued. What's that? That this bond we share, it's more than just a study. It's real. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. I don't know where this will lead, but I want to find out. Together, Kiran's heart skipped a beat. He had always known that this connection between them was more than just physical, more than just scientific. It was deeper, more significant than anything he had experienced before. But hearing her admit it out loud made it all the more real. Together, he echoed, his voice thick with emotion. I'm in, Naali. No matter where this goes, I'm in. A smile spread across Naali's face. And for the first time in a long while, it wasn't just the smile of a princess or a scientist. It was the smile of someone who had found a new path, a path she wanted to walk with Kiran by her side. The beginning of a new era. With the council's approval and their bond stronger than ever, Naali and Kiran continued their work together, exploring the uncharted territory between their worlds. It wasn't just about science anymore. It was about the possibility of a future where their species could coexist, learn from each other, and perhaps even love one another. Over time, their relationship grew, deeper, stronger, and more meaningful. Nayali had learned from Kieran's humanity, and in turn, Kieran had learned from Nayali's alien nature. What began as a scientific experiment had evolved into something neither of them could have predicted. And as the years passed, the bridge between Earth and the stars became stronger. The bond between Nayali and Kieran became a symbol of the new future, a future where humans and aliens were no longer strangers, but partners, equal in their desires for connection, understanding, and the possibility of love. In time, the world would know that it wasn't just their physical compatibility that made humans and aliens alike. It was their hearts, their capacity to embrace the unfamiliar, and their willingness to forge bonds that transcended the stars themselves. The end